how to get the right information from the right people. I am going to walk you through basically the things that I did to get my company to where it is so far. And there's still a lot of room to go and a lot of room to grow as far as my skills go. But I want to basically tell you what's helped me a ton and helped some of the other students that I was with in what was essentially like not a conglomerate, but like a cohort of people who were building companies. So, quick background so that you know what I'm saying is stuff I've actually done. I had when I first started my company, it was a 3D printing company, and I went ahead and reached out to people via email, to designers, and started and got over 30 contracts signed with these designers. I've also gotten to talk with, or gotten in the room with a handful of CEOs, gotten to see some of the behind the scenes in their factories. Additionally, what do you call it? Yeah, I guess the cohort is the biggest thing though, because in that time I conducted 125 interviews with people all the way from like the general consumer up to CEOs of a handful of small companies, and even up to, I'd say, companies with like 15 to 30 employees. Is about as far as I've climbed in terms of actually like reaching out to them directly and getting their attention. But and the other half of this is basically the instructor presiding over this course said that like these interviews that I've conducted are the best he's seen in the course's history. So I'm gonna try and give you that information. Hopefully it's useful and doesn't sound cocky. But the first thing starts out with just knowing what information you even need, and that's gonna change throughout whatever project you're doing, whether it's a school project or something you intend to do like in a very large way. But you kind of outline, what do I know and what do I need to know? And even if there are things that you're like, oh, I've kind of got the answer to that, or I could figure it out on my own, I mean, certainly try. Like, no project that you do is going to be complete without your work, but it is definitely okay to, and I would say recommended, to ask people who have already done it. What worked for you, what didn't? Because in the real world, it costs a lot of money to make mistakes. Not that mistakes are bad, because you will learn a ton from it. I've had several products that I've built and then failed to launch, and I have learned so much that if I had tried to build the company I'm building now, like 6 years ago when I started building products, or 8 years ago, it would have flopped immediately. So it was good. I only lost a couple $1,000s in the process, like doing small experiments each way. But yeah, so start with having a clear understanding of roughly what you want, and literally just make questions. So what I did, right, started out with a basic set of questions for the type of person I expected to interview first, which in my case was, I wanted to know who builds Legos, and what kinds of things they like, and if they would buy essentially the product that I had designed. And then I assumed that I'd be talking primarily with parents. So I made the interview based around what I thought they would be privy to, what they would answer. Shoot. Technical difficulties, hold on. I'm being stabbed in the foot. Okay, anyways. So, yeah, what they would be privy to. So, 15 questions is what my instructor asked us to do. And I went in there, first couple interviews was just like, find anyone you know. Like, start off with literally like your parents, your siblings, your friends, even people who are like definitely not the people you need to talk to, because it gets you comfortable talking with other people. Your interviews will go much more smoothly if they are like relatively rehearsed. Even though it sounds kind of like corporate-ish, it has been terribly useful for me, because when you sound like you know what you're talking about, people are more willing to give you serious answers. So anyways, talk to those first few people and then ask them. I ask in every interview, what should I have asked you that I didn't, and who else do I need to talk to? And then if they give me some names, they're like I'm like, hey, can you connect me with that person, or how can I reach them, or can I name drop you? Some of them will say no, You cannot name drop me, but this might be a good person for you to try and find a way to contact. And some of them will be like, yeah, he's my best friend. I'll just tell him, I'll introduce you to. And that has been incredibly helpful as well. And the thing is, when you do high quantities of interviews, you'll find that someone will be like, no, I'm not really comfortable giving out that contact. And then 2 people later, you talk to someone who's like, oh yeah, here's his number, you know? And, you know, take it with a, how do I say this? Like, take it lightly. Don't abuse your contacts because they are everything. When you want information, the best place to get it is from people, in my personal opinion. But I really like talking to people, so that might be an introvert's nightmare. But like I spend a lot of time like reading articles and like watching videos on these things and attempting to do it myself. The attempting to do it part I think is super important, but it's also good to know when to not pull the trigger on designing something because you need more information. But yeah, so, and as you can probably tell by this point in the video, this process is fairly chaotic, and that's just part of it. Like, you won't get good information unless you're applying the information, and you won't be able to apply the information unless you keep talking to people. But there is a space that you get stuck in where you just keep talking and not doing. And I've seen a lot of people get stuck there. I've gotten stuck there. Kind of like have some sense of self-analysis to know when you're doing that. But otherwise, yeah, you ask your questions and then they'll point you in the next direction. And what I do is I have my template of questions open right next to my actual questions. And I do this in Google Docs, but I just have a copy of those questions with their name on it and the date. And then as I'm talking to them and they might bring up something that's like, oh, wow, I should ask about that in my next interview, I add it to the template and I also add it to their interview. But you want it like fill in the blank style. And then after you've talked to a fair number of people, you'll be able to you'll identify sort of what information you still need to get and what kinds of people you need to get it from. Because at the beginning, you're just like, oh, can someone tell me about this topic? Then, you know, later on, it becomes more specific. Like, how do you manage your finances? How much did this thing cost to build? Who actually liked playing with the toy you invented? How long would you say on average people are willing to, talk with you about this? Because a lot of the people who have started companies have also gone through similar interviewing process to get the information that they need to know that what they're building is something people will actually use. So yeah, so you go out and talk to them. And then one of the problems I ran into was I was like, okay, I'm not getting a lot of traction on this idea. And B, as I'm going through this, I'm realizing that a lot of these things are dead ends. Like, parents are referring me either to children to talk to, which I feel like it's not terribly responsible to do, and is not also the right customer that I'm looking for because they don't have money. But it's also they're giving me to their friends and family who have like very, very little interest. So one of the things I did was Google search, literally, where do these people hang out? Where do Lego fans hang out? What what websites do they use? What forums are they on? And then you also have to think like the people that you want to talk to the best of your ability. So it's like, I'll type in questions that I would want the answer to if I were one of them, right? Like, for example, I'm trying to make it easier to get retired Lego sets. So I would type in, where do I get retired Lego sets? If I see that there's tons of options, maybe that's a thing I don't pursue. Or maybe I'm like, there's tons of options and yet I don't hear about a lot of people doing it. Why don't I go ask them why they're not doing it? And that's a huge thing, is like asking people how good the real world resources are in terms of actually helping them get what they want. Because there's the side that the data shows, which is, oh, there's this many clicks, there's this many users that are going through. But then when you talk about user experience, you get a different side to the data, right? Like, for example, although not necessarily a real world example, you find that there's a very large amount of incarceration, right? But then if you go and interview people, they happen to say, oh, prison life is super cushy. Then it's not really that big of a deal that tons of people are being incarcerated, although, a very hypothetical example. But like the people's words and the numbers tell two different stories. So talk to people, ask them about their experiences with things. The next thing is like, right, you keep refining your questions as you go, but also a huge part of an effective interview is that you're not doing a lot of talking. You're not there to sell. Even at the end, when your product is fully developed, you're still not always there to sell. You're always looking for new information. You're trying to figure out, what did I not think of yet? And then prioritizing, okay, well, what things do I need to focus on? Because every one of your customers is probably going to give you some suggestion of, oh, I wish you had this feature, I want that feature. You can't build them all, and some of them are going to conflict. But it's important to at least get that information, because you can only think of so many ideas. And at the same time, don't have your customer design your product, because they don't know the things that you know about how to build things, about how to connect people properly. So it's still equally important that you're using your own ideas and relying on your intuition or experts if you can get a hold of them. But yeah, so I mean, I'm trying to think, like, as I was going with this, well, I guess I'll talk about the structure of the interview in a second. But in terms of climbing to the top, right? I went on Facebook and just messaged, I think the maximum is like 50 people a day. So I messaged like 30 or 40 a day. And I just wrote hey, I saw you posted in this forum. Sometimes I'll throw in a compliment that's like specific to them, because I want them to know that I am actually going to talk to them, not like a robot. Can I get 20 minutes of your time to ask you some questions about your thoughts on this? And actually the first sentence is usually, hey, I'm Alex, I'm a student studying this, or I'm a researcher doing this. People, A, make it as close to true as possible, but B, you are studying that thing. And people are much more receptive when they know that you're just trying to ask them about their experience rather than selling something. We get bombarded with ads all day. People don't want to be sold anything. They're so sick of it. And so when you get there, it's important that you don't saturate the interview with, hey, here's all the cool things my product can do, because they're just going to be like, oh, that's nice. Good luck. I'm sure it'll work out for you. But there's kind of two ways to really assess, will they actually buy this thing? One is if you just straight up ask them, hey, I have that thing that you basically described you wanted right now. Will you pay for it? Or how much will you pay for it? And I'll give it to you. And then you might even put them on like a waiting list or something. But the point is, you have to simulate that feeling of, would you actually buy, knowing that it's a real thing, not just a thought in your head. The other side is your questions would be structured around the features. So you're like, for me, it was like, wow, how was your experience buying from this company? Did you like it? What did you like about it? Was their website good? What's your favorite website to use? Why is it? What makes it easy to use, right? And that's just like one very specific thing, talking about websites. But the information that you're getting from that is telling you, without a product in front of them, this is what people wish they had. And a huge thing that you need to know is, how much are they spending to fix that problem? If it's costing them time or money, then it's somewhere where there's probably a product needed, right? And that's a place where I'd say refer to an entrepreneurship professor or someone who's done it more to get better information. But I'm giving you the starting points. But yeah, you want to know, will they actually pay for it? Well, have they tried paying for solutions in the past? Do they like their solutions? If the answer is yes, we've put money into it, and no, we still haven't gotten the rewards we're looking for, you fill that gap. Give them the thing that they will pay for that will solve the problem. But if people are saying, yeah, I just sort of suck it up every day, it's not really a big deal, or they whine about it, but they don't have any intentions of changing their lifestyle, or they're putting money into it, but they don't see that this is a way to sort of change what they're doing, then it's not worth your time. With the exception of, that might be a good time to pivot. If you notice, like, oh, people are saying that they wish they had this, but not the thing that I'm describing, but something adjacent to it, consider just changing to the adjacent version of that. But anyways, so, yeah, consider changing to the adjacent version. So in terms of the, I guess last thing on this note, last two things. One is that, like I said before, the structure of your interview is going to change as you get to know more and more in depth what you actually want out of these people. And so, for example, in starting a company, first thing is, what do people even want? Figure that out first. Because you can't worry about the details of your product if the product itself is not figured out. What are you even trying to do? Then, more important than the product is what problem is that product solving? You want to be solving something that is a definable issue, that you can say this person experiences this thing in this way for this reason, or these reasons, and then sort of boil it down, because you're gonna get a lot of like slight variations on how do people experience it, what do they experience. It's gonna cost different people different amounts. Different people are going to care about it in different quantities. So at that point, it's a matter of, well, what would I say is the core question, or what are like the top 3 most important things that I think need to be solved? Because at the end of the day, it's at your discretion. You're the person leading the study. But yeah, so you are leading the study. You choose your central questions, and then maybe the next steps are, okay, how do you feel about these solutions? How do you feel about those solutions? And propose a couple of them. Be like, how likely are you to buy this thing? And some numerical data is useful, but not usually at the beginning, according to my professors. But I did some like online surveys for the people that are like, oh, I don't really have time for an interview. Because some of them either don't or don't have the interest. Some of them will say they'll fill out your survey and they don't, and that's fine. You will talk to so many people that it almost doesn't matter. But yeah, so you ask these people, then what solutions would you like? And then once you kind of narrow down a solution that seems to be fairly popular, you start working on, what features should it have? How would you like the features to look? And then towards the end of each interview, you may want to show them just a hand-drawn sketch of how it might look, or a dummy version of the app, or show them like some of the data that's come out of your research and ask them, what do you think of this? What's your reaction? And you'll get all sorts of data. But the point is, like, don't just go in expecting to get your one piece of information, because you'll miss out on all the more important stuff. And so before I go finally into what's in an interview, I think it's very important to note that you do not need to talk to the most important person right away. Many times you may not even need to talk to them almost at all. So as an example of that is where we are right now if you watch this video. I am not an expert in this field, but I have had experiences that have led me to the point that I'm at right now. And so I'm giving you the tools to take the first steps. Listening to Elon Musk, or I don't know if he's successful or not successful given how things are going, but someone you consider to be a success in your field is helpful, but they're often going to give you advice either for the very beginning of where you are, of like how to even get started in your field, or where they are right now, which is a foremost expert in the field. Neither of which is terribly useful to you if you've already gotten things underway, because if you're looking up to them, then they're not your peer, which means you're not in the same place as them, which means their advice is not going to be terribly useful. So you can continue looking for information from them. The information I'm giving you is someone who is partially along the process. And then as you need more and more specific information, then you ask the people, because as you need more specific information, the number of people who can give it to you dwindles. So that's when you start asking people, because you don't want to waste anyone's time. That's part of relationship building. So you only ask basically the lowest person on the totem pole that can answer your question. If I want to know how customers feel about something, before I ever ask a CEO how their customers feel about it, I should know something about their business. I should have talked to at least one of their employees, and I should have interviewed a number of customers, preferably ones who actually go to them, and then have something to bring to the table. And there are times when blind interviews are really good, going in and knowing virtually nothing has been an asset to me, because then I can ask someone, hey, explain it to me like you explain to someone who's outside the field. Like with buying certain types of Legos, it's just like, I've never put down the money for those things. I want you to explain to me where you'd get it, how you get it. I ask people to walk me through the buying process. How much time did you spend? What did you click on? Did you get distracted while you were buying? I mean, I want to know everything about it, and then I'll sift through and find the important parts afterwards or as I go. But yeah, so you're trying to like get as much of the information as you can beforehand, so that when you show up to that person's office, you're only getting, well, you're only spending the right amount of their time to build the relationship, get the information you need, and not waste their time. So my point is, partially, this is like a step up from the starting point. When you need the advanced help, go to someone who's got way more experience than me. But their time is expensive. Like my mentor, I think he charges like roughly $200, $300 an hour. And it seems the way a lot of consultants are, especially ones who like manage businesses. So keep that in mind, you know. There's some advice you can get for free, some free advice that you can get that's useless. And you need to make that call. And a lot of that call comes from consuming a fairly large amount of it, doing things that will actually verify, did this work or did this not work? And then also running, what do you call it? And then asking people in the field to see the real world effects, right? Like everyone's like, oh, do drop shipping. But then it remains to be seen. But in a lot of cases, it's like, well, your revenue numbers are high, but your profit numbers are very low or negative. It's very hard to go into a saturated market. If you're selling stuff and everyone else is selling the same thing, it's like, yeah, it worked for them, but it's not going to work for you because you missed the cue. But where the money's like actually coming, is it coming from them selling courses, or is it coming from them actually selling products? So many different things. But yeah, but the point is, right, if you like look up how does this work, then you will eventually find the answers you're looking for. And you're gonna get some conflicting information, but that's still helpful. So anyways, the interview, what goes in it? So very first thing I do is demographics. I ask them if they're comfortable with me putting their demographics. I put usernames if I found them on like Facebook or something, but I ask them, hey, if you don't mind, can I put your name in here? It's not going to be published. And a lot of that stuff is for internal use. But yeah, so can I get your name? Can I get, well, yeah, so you want a little bit of their background, maybe race, age, what kind of customer they are, figure out like why they buy the thing that they do, or get more information on why they think they're in your target demographic or why they think they're not, because I've had that too. And always at the beginning I ask, so how much time do you have to talk? Because I've had a lot of interviews that I say, let's talk for 20 minutes. Some of them go on for 2 hours because I want them to. Some of them go on for 2 hours because I can't get out of the room because they won't stop talking. I mean, you get a lot of mixed results with this, but I'll talk about customer types afterwards. So you're talking to, so you've gotten the demographics. Now you want to crack open two different parts of this. One, what problems do you experience? And two, what solutions do you want to see? And the biggest thing, at least at the beginning, is understanding behavior. What do they do? So ask them for details. Don't just ask them, especially don't ask them yes or no questions. And I'm saying that to you as someone who also worked in sales. Don't ask yes or no questions. It will shut the conversation down. And if you do need to, like if you need to ask them, how much do you spend, right? They're going to give you a number maybe, but then you ask them, oh, can you break that down for me? Or when do you spend that? Or how often are you making payments on that? All these different questions, but every step of the way, get more information until you're no longer getting useful information or until you're running out of time. If they say they've only got 10 minutes when you ask for 20, you only take 10 minutes of their time, or they will never talk to you again, and they will spread word that you are not a good person to talk to. It is so imperative to build good relationships with people. And pleasantries at the beginning are nice, are very important as well. Because I personally do care quite a bit about the people I talk to. I just like people in general. But I want to know, what are your interests? What do you do outside of this? what brought you to the forum that I found you on anyways? And then sometimes they'll be like, oh, I was there, or they'll say like, I was there because my son was interested in Legos and that kind of got me interested in them too. And I'll be like, oh shoot, yeah, that's awesome. Like, my uncles were interested in Legos and I got them sort of handed down, and I got my first one when I was 5 years old. And knowing that you are in their crowd will help a ton as well. Like, they want to know you're genuinely interested, not just like, oh, I need this for a project, oh, I need this for money. Like, if you're invested, they will give you so much more of their time and their energy and their care. So you do, like, there's no shortcuts. You have to just care about these people. Yeah, so you talk to them, find out a little bit about their lives, find out what brought them here, ask them about their experiences, leave it open. Don't just follow your questions. If you find that there's more useful information that you can get out of them by asking a different set of questions, just ask them. Go ad lib. Like, the best interview doesn't feel like an interview, it feels like a conversation. And I've been told that like my interviews are fun, and I think the reason is just because I'm letting people talk about things they really like. Like, very few people will ask you about how much you like Legos. But the other side is I'm just letting the conversation flow. If we wind up talking about nothing, that's kind of fine, because we still have a good relationship. And these are people who will trust you and you trust them, and you can still go back to them. So it's fairly important to just keep the relationship going. But on the other end, so then you're wrapping up your interview, right? You've asked all your questions, you find out about the processes, you find out about the numbers. It also helps to know what people think the numbers are, right? If you go to them and say like, oh, only 10% of people who buy Legos are female, you kind of want to see how do they perceive that. Because if they're going into a room expecting to only be interacting with males, then that may be a good thing to them. It might encourage them to shop more. But it may also tell you how do they behave, right? Theoretically, right? If males behave differently around other males than around females, then you know also the appetite and the environment that they're working in, and you can match that. To some degree, talk to it the way they talk. Don't curse if they don't curse. Use about as much body language as they use. Like, some of these are just like communication things that build rapport. Just don't push it. Don't be fake, and give them a fair amount of information that is true, because like, you might be able to simulate, oh, I am a realtor, right? You're not actually a realtor. You're just trying to like figure out how people would react if you were one. Then like, that works fine for a little bit, but if you try to push it, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, the truth eventually comes out. I think this bird may be injured. But are you okay? Dude, it's all right. Oh God, I don't want to freak it out. Anyways. Oh God, he's really not getting the picture. I don't want him to think that he's gonna get injured. But anyways, so wrapping up the interview. Oh, buddy. And you ask them, what else should I have asked you? You know, what can I give you? There's a little buddy down there. But anyways, you ask them, you know, what else should I have asked you? Could we talk again if you didn't get to finish the conversation? And I have run into this a lot, where you don't get to finish what you're talking about. Write down what you wanted to ask them next time, because a lot of my second time interviews have sucked. Because I go back and talk to them and I'm like, why are we both here? And when they hear that, conversation kind of goes nowhere. It usually ends early. And it's okay to say you have to go as well, but trying to do it with expensive people, whose time is hard to get a hold of, or who, like, literally you would have to pay many hundreds of dollars an hour to get in the room. So lawyers are also like that. They're expensive people to talk to, so make sure you use the time wisely, even if you feel like garbage. I've had to like basically throw up after some of my interviews because I was so nervous. You just got to power through when necessary, and other times give yourself some grace. But yeah, so anyways, I'm more or less gonna wrap this up. here, but yeah, like go out and try these things, talk to people, do the things they tell you, but take all their advice with a grain of salt. Quick thing about customers, you will meet, there's a good chance you will meet mostly nice, very nice people, unless there's a very good reason for you not to. Like if your industry is just assholes, you want to find out why assholes are assholes, then don't be shocked when they are. But in other cases, if you are just talking to people, I basically only had one person who gave me trouble, and even then tried to keep a nice relationship, and then I got blocked, and I'm fine with that. But it wasn't on my terms. Like I didn't shut them down, as far as I can tell. And people are going to perceive you differently. Some people are going to perceive you as rude, even when you're trying to be nice. And I would say lead with niceness. There's really no reason to like burn bridges, especially when you're not even in the same room. If you're just like digitally interviewing someone, just be kind. If you have to leave, if you have to get out of it, it's like leaving a bad date. I mean, just move on. But yeah. And then the other thing is there's some people that I've been warned not to talk to. I haven't talked to them, but I would say be careful, kind of take that advice as well. As like, they're basically like, some CEOs are like, hey, there's this one guy in the industry who tears companies apart, and he always tries to jump on board, doesn't help at all, and then will go file lawsuits against them and sink the company. Be careful when you talk to him. And to me, that means don't talk to him unless you absolutely have to, because your company is in danger the second you do that. And you don't always know, right? If you're contacting people on Facebook, you get, it's a lottery system, right? I've gotten to talk to people who happen to be professors of entrepreneurs and CEOs, and like it was just an accident because they're just chilling on the Reddit pages or on Facebook or Instagram, and they are like, what do you call it? Yeah, they're just like another one of the people there. So they're not necessarily of high importance to that community, and so it's much easier to talk to them, and they'll give you all this other advice you didn't know you needed. Like cybersecurity expert, I got to talk to him without even trying to reach out to one, but he gave me an assessment of how my stuff is going because he wanted to know, how does it work? And if you're technically competent in their field, talk to them like that, but do not act like a know-it-all, or you're gonna get totally screwed. Yeah, don't talk too much in the interview. Like, give them the breath to speak, because you're here for their opinion at the end of the day. And they came to, everyone likes to hear themselves talk for the most part. So these are all things just like good practice is like, you're interviewing them, they're not interviewing you, so let them answer the interview questions. Yeah, I feel like that's most of it. There's just like a ton of information that I got out of doing this myself. I would suggest doing it with a high volume of people so that you can move from that early information stage where you're just validating your ideas onto like, does this work? What solution do they want? Or, you know, whatever the outcome of your study is. Like, there's going to be different parts to it, because originally you're just going in there for like cursory information, and then afterwards you want more details, right? Because at the beginning you might be like, oh, what problems does this community face? Then once you've identified the main ones, you choose one, and then you explore that more in depth, and then you ask more specific questions. So a lot of different ways to approach it, but they all kind of follow that process of like, start by asking, then by doing, and all the tiny steps in between. And say just, I mean, there's so many bits of advice built into this, but a lot of it is like, build good relationships, don't burn bridges, talk to people at their level, and yeah, I mean, and keep it technical, right? If it starts veering off course, be like, I don't know, I mean, you gotta be nice about it, right? You kind of just ask them a question again, you know, they start talking about their dogs, be like, oh, cool, I do have to get going soon though, can you answer one more question about this thing? You know, find a way to steer it back to what you're looking for. Or if it starts getting all over the place, be like, you throw in a fact of yours that's related to it. Like, they're like, oh yeah, my dog is just so cute. I'm like, oh my God, I saw a Lego dog yesterday. It was the coolest thing. Can I show it to you? Give me your thoughts on it. And, you know, where do you think I would buy this dog? Like, just all the strangest things that you need to do. But a fair amount of it is about taking risks. You know, I was scared to go into these rooms before I did it. That I was scared many times, but usually the result's pretty tame. There's very few people that are out there to torch your career, and even if they do, until way later, you're not important enough for it to really affect you. So, you know, just go out there, make some mistakes, try not to offend people, but don't hold back so much that you don't even get the information you need. Yeah, that's roughly it. There's definitely more to say on this topic, but I feel like this is a good place to work with. So, quick recap. Start with friends and family, ask them who they know, then do your Google searching about, well, I'm not finding the exact people I'm looking for. Do things that they would do to find the results that they would find online and find the other people they would wind up talking to online. Then reach out to them. Or sometimes you may even just need to go to the place where they're shopping. You want to open a competing coffee shop? Stand outside of another coffee shop until you get kicked out. Sit in a lobby and ask, hey, can I talk to so-and-so once they're available, just 2 minutes in the elevator? Or like my professor always says, you know, don't talk to the CEO, talk to their secretary, because they'll tell you who you really need to talk to. And then when it winds up on their voicemail, you can say, hey, so-and-so from the CEO's office gave me your name, and said that you would give me some good advice on this. Can I talk to you? And now you've got basically reputation already built in. So, you know, you're building up a reputation for yourself every step of this way. It can fall apart, but your effort will also make it fly. And there are always people who haven't heard of you, which is kind of a nice thing. So it means you still have the opportunity to make fresh starts. But yeah. Anyways, good luck with all this. I know it was terribly helpful to me to have gone through that experience, and I hope this is like somewhat useful to you guys. See you in the next one.